Joining us now is Mark Frohnmayer. He is the founder of Equal Vote Coalition, and they are in favor of star voting. Mark, talk to me about star voting. What is it?
Cenk, thanks for having me on the program. So star, actually, the whole system is described in the name. Score, then automatic runoff. And the way it works is super simple. Your ballot, instead of being limited to one choice. So right now, in almost all elections in the country, we're limited to one choice. This lets you actually score the candidates from 0 to 5. 0 means you give them no support. 5 means you give them full support. The two highest scoring candidates overall are the finalists. And then there's this automatic runoff. And in that automatic runoff, your full vote goes to whichever of those two finalists you gave a higher score. So it gives you a way to have a massively more expressive opinion on the ballot. And it lets you finally, once and for all, truly support the candidates you really like without having to worry that you've got to vote for a lesser evil in order to prevent your worst outcome from winning the race.
So Mark is one of the folks who might actually get this system into place for the first time in history. We'll talk about that in a second. But just so that everybody's clear, tell us the difference between ranked choice voting and star voting.
Yeah, so ranked choice is you rank the candidates first choice, second choice, third choice, sometimes many more choices. In star, so ranking tells you I prefer A over B, but it doesn't say necessarily how much you support A more than B. If you say this is my number one, my number two, my number three, it could mean you really like A, you think B is barely acceptable and C is the devil, or it might mean that you actually think A, B, and C are all very good, but A is a little bit better than B and B is a little bit better than C. The other issue with ranked choice is that it only ever in each round looks at your first choice picks, and what that can cause is it can cause a candidate that has really broad support to get knocked out of the race when there's a lot of underlying support that would otherwise have carried that candidate to the win. And so star actually, it always counts all of your preferences, and it always completes in those two simple rounds.
So let me give a good case scenario and a potential bad case scenario here to just complete the thought. A good case scenario is if I'm in a Democratic primary, I think of one in Texas where there was a bunch of good candidates, and I want to give Derek Crow a 5, but I really like Mary Wilson, the person he's running against, so I want to give her a 4. That better, and then the rest of them are corporate Democrats, I want to give them 0s. Okay, so that does a better job of, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because then Mary Wilson would be just as close to the corporate Democrat, because she'd be at 2 and they'd be at 3, as she would be to Derek Crow, when in reality, I think that those two are fantastic and the other ones are terrible. Have I done a decent job of explaining the good case scenario here for star voting?
Yeah, and we're so the other nice thing about it is that it actually allows sort of any number of candidates to compete in an election and still get an outcome that represents the will of the voters. So what we're initially petitioning this for nonpartisan races, and what that's going to let us do is actually just move the vote to November, rather than having one vote in May. In Oregon, the primaries in May. And so right now, candidates have to run in May. And then if nobody gets 50% in that primary, then the top two have to run again in November. Makes for a very long campaign season. And it means that you have two different electorates that make that choice. Right. What star voting will do is it'll collapse that all into one choice in November. So I think to your point, to your question, yes. So if you have what makes the most sense really is that you can basically really fully support the candidates that you like, and then still have a very nuanced choice between them, because you know that whichever two candidates make it to the runoff, your full vote is going to go to whichever one of those you gave a higher score. It also means that you can give two candidates let's say you liked those two candidates the same, you can just give them both 5s.
Right, got you. And then you probably get this bad case scenario often, but I'm just curious what the answer is. So could the system encourage, though, the people getting 3s to win, the ones that are kind of mediocre, but a lot of people give them 3s, whereas the ones that really animate people get either a 5 or a 1? You see what I'm saying?
So you're saying that you've got some, basically the mealy mouthed people in the middle who don't take positions on anything are still getting. Honestly, I don't think that those candidates are going to appeal to much of anybody. Right? When you're voting, you're trying to help the candidates that you really like to win. Now, I mean, if I'm voting on a star ballot, I'm going to definitely give a 1 to a candidate that I think is better than the worst candidates on the ballot, right? But I'm not going to give necessarily a bunch of 2s, 3s, 4s to those types of candidates.
Yeah, I get it. All right, so then now let's talk about implementation, because there's 2 counties in Oregon that might do this. So what's the status of that?
We've now qualified for the ballot in Lane County, which is sort of the second largest population center in Oregon. And so it will be. We started our petition on the Women's March, and we ended it on Independence Day, and found out about a week later that we're going to make the ballot. So now it goes into sort of the real campaign mode, where we're trying to get 50% plus 1 to say yes. And if they do, then it will modify our county charter, and it will be used for the first time in public elections in 2020.
Wow, so that's a breakthrough, and it would be fascinating. So one of the things that I like, I know the right wing loves to lie about how they like states' rights, but whatever states' rights they don't agree with, they're like, oh, no, I'm not buying it, right? But I do like that there is experimentation in the different states on different systems. So it'd be really great to have Oregon try this and see how it goes.
Well, and that's, we look at it as, one, having another arrow in the quiver of democracy, if you will, right? So it's a system that can't go everywhere until it's been done somewhere. And for a lot of folks, we found it to be a very simple system to explain, and the math behind it really checks out. So when it comes to things like unlocking the sort of the very polarized nature of our politics, we think this one actually stands the best shot as a single winner system for doing that. And so having that in the mix, we think is a very good thing.
All right, the website is starlane.us. I never know whether to say US or us.
Us. It's all about us.
Okay, starlane.us. And then for Equal Vote Coalition website, it's equal.vote, equal.vote. Mark, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, brother.
Hey, Cenk, really appreciate you having me on the show.